coming out on what is not a great night. We're also broadcasting this on the web. We have 4 or 5 people attending virtually, and the meeting's going to be recorded. And all of this information, if you give us about a week, we're going to get it up on the Township website. This meeting, this presentation, these plans, the first public meeting, notes from our focus group. So there'll be a lot of information up there that you can review. We're not going to try to go through everything, because if we did, we'd be here all night, which you wouldn't be happy about, I don't think. Here's our agenda, and again, if you ask me what's the plan, I'm going to say we don't know. We're still in the idea stage. We're very conceptual. Nothing is cast in stone, and what we're trying to do tonight is talk about lots of different ideas, and just everything that's suggested tonight on these plans that we're going to talk about came from the first public meeting and from our focus groups. So all the ideas you see were generated by the community. Here's our steering committee. Not all of them are here, but we've had a really loyal and hardworking committee, and we're working with them over the next several months and with you to come up with hopefully the best plan. Simone Collins, briefly, we'll be 33 years old in July of next year. I've been practicing in the Philadelphia area for well over 40 years, and most of what we do is parks and recreation trails. If you want to go to our website, you can see some of the work we've done. Most of our clients, about 95%, are municipalities, counties. We work for the state. So we really focus on municipal planning, and Parks and Rec is one of the main things that we do. We do a lot of those plans. We probably have about 4 or 5 park plans under process right now. So what is the master plan process? And this is always a little bit vague, but we try to clarify it. So what a master plan is not, it's not a plan we can give to a contractor and say, build it. It's a conceptual plan. It's to scale. We're going to have very accurate cost estimates, but it's not a construction document. And so what we do during the master plan is we start with collecting site data, and we do a site analysis. Brookline Park is a pretty flat palette of grass right now, so there's not a lot of analysis. There's certainly some that's important. And what we then do with meetings and community forums and focus groups is develop a site program and to come up with preliminary concepts. And we shared these concepts with the steering committee a few weeks ago, and now we're sharing them with the larger public audience. We'll get reactions. Tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to present elements that might be in the park. We're going to present the concept plans. We're going to ask you to hold your questions. And then we're going to ask you what questions you have. Not if you like it or don't like it yet, but what questions. If something unclear about what we presented, and we'll do that for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And then we're going to break, and we're going to give everybody one green dot. And you're going to be able to go to the plan you like the most and put a dot there, just to get a snapshot of opinion. It doesn't mean that's going to be the plan. And the other thing that you'll hear tonight is elements from each plan can be mixed and matched. If we have a playground in one and not in another, it doesn't mean the plan we will finalize won't have a playground, or if there's a pavilion or something like that. So think of these things as interchangeable parts that we can mix around as we get to the plan. And my guess is whatever the master plan is will be none of these plans. It'll be some combination that we don't know yet. That will probably be the master plan. So once we get to the draft plan, we'll have I think it's a 2-month review period where the plan will be on the website. It'll be open for public comment. We'll ask for your detailed comments. We'll get those comments. We'll review those with the committee. We'll come back and make revisions, and then we'll have hopefully an approved master plan that will go to the Board of Commissioners and we'll ask them to approve the plan. Once that plan's approved, then the real work starts. Then the township has to secure funding, figure out how they're going to pay for it through grants and local funds, do design and engineering, do the construction, and then complete the improvements. And it's likely that not all the improvements will be completed in one fell swoop. It might be a couple phases. That's how most communities attack projects like this. So it's a long process. If I were to guess today, if everything went really smoothly, you might see a shovel in the ground in a couple of years, because that's how long it takes. It'll take about 15, 18 months to do the engineering, get the permits, stormwater management, all the stuff, the technical aspects that have to be done. So it takes time. So here we are with the process. As Brian said, this is our second public meeting. We're going to come back to you at the end of March with our draft plan. We're going to meet with the committee 2 more times between now and March. That draft plan will be presented to the Board of Commissioners in April. We'll get comments from the steering committee. We'll get your comments. Hopefully you can take the time to give us written comments, and then come back at the end of June for the final public meeting, and then go to the commissioners in July, hopefully for their approval. They may decide not to approve it. We don't know. Hopefully they will. So at the first public meeting, we generated goals, facts, and concepts. And I won't read all of these, but we feel all these goals are important. We want to provide for all ages. We want to have an aesthetically beautiful place. We want this. One of the things, we competed against a number of firms, and we were lucky enough to get selected for this. And one of the things that Brian and Eileen stressed in the proposal process is they wanted something special here. They felt it was a special neighborhood, and it should be a beautiful place that neighbors can enjoy. So aesthetics is very important. We wanted to relate to the residential scale of the neighborhood. There's an idea to use resalvaged stone from the old school. Be a good neighbor, be respectful to all the people who live nearby or right adjacent, and encourage, through the design, encourage people to walk or bike to the park. Although, no matter what we do, some people will drive, and that's fine. We all drive places. And then these are all the concepts that were generated. And there, you can see there's a lot of things came up. Plants were very high up in the upper left-hand corner. Walkways, of course, I would think everyone assumes we're going to have walkways so you can walk through the park, get some exercise, maybe jog, maybe some structures, and maybe no structures. One of the comments was no concession stand, although people suggested a pavilion or gazebo. Maybe a place where classes could happen, maybe a surface where yoga classes could happen, or a dance class for kids or something like that. Maybe a place where you do holiday tree lighting. Play was a big item. Maybe things where kids of different ages might be able to play in the park, whether it's through formal play equipment or some of the topography and things that we create. It's just from practicality, we know we're going to have some good amount of lawn, because if we don't, the park will be astronomically expensive. So we know we're going to have some area of open lawn. And there may be aspects of this park that take on characteristics of a town green that you might see in a little village somewhere, a community space, open lawn, green space. There might be some little t-ball things that go on there, which happen there now. Education might be, we might educate folks who visit with boards or QR codes where you can find out what the plants are in the park and maybe understand some of the plantings. And then some of the site amenities, you can see all the different things under site amenities, shade, some parking, bike parking, benches, picnic tables, maybe public art, trash receptacles, all the things you might expect in any park. With green infrastructure, stormwater management is very important. It's something we have to do based on the law. We have to make sure that no more water comes off the site than presently does. We also have to improve the water quality of the water that goes into the ground and percolates into the soil. Safety and security, we'll probably have some fencing in the park. Lighting has come up. If we have lighting, we want it to be respectful of neighbors, and that's something we will explore with all of you. And then in terms of facilities, a lot of things were suggested. Not all of these are going to make the cut, but we've listed them all. Swimming pool, dog park, great ideas, but probably this park isn't the right park for either of those because of its size. Typically, a dog park is at least 2 acres, so that's almost the full size of this park. Basketball, adult fitness, maybe some type of a water feature, etc. So you can see all the ideas that were generated by the folks who came to the first public meeting. We also had 4 focus groups so far, and you can see the groups that we talked to. And I have to say, the most outstanding group were the middle school students. And I can't remember the name of the school. Haverford Middle School, thank you. The teachers were amazing, and they had every kid in the class got up and presented his or her ideas. And I have to say, we do a lot of these interviews with school students, and this was by far the best one I've ever been a part of. And they came up with really innovative ideas. When we get all the notes up on the website, you can read the things they came up with. And they were great. And then we're going to do the senior group next week. We'll also have a record of all these on the website soon. So, as you know, probably most of you have taken the survey. If you haven't, please take it. Sarah is going to go through the results so far from the opinion survey.
Thank you, Dean. Okay, so in terms of the public opinion survey, it is still open. We're going to keep that open through kind of the going into the draft section of the master plan process. But currently we've had 581 people respond and take the survey to date. 99% have been from Haverford Township. So good job getting the word out. That's a great response level. But we just have some basic demographics, and you know, the average year that people live in their community is 18 years. And then we wanted to understand why people choose to live in Haverford, because you guys do have such a great sense of community, and a lot of people were born here and chose to move back here if they went away for school or early work. So we kind of wanted to understand why people choose to live in Haverford. So you can kind of see those top things being good schools, community oriented, proximity to the city, parks and recreation also kind of ranking high. And then also we always kind of like to understand the age of people responding. So the average age of the respondent was 49. And then the average household size was 3.5 as well. So that kind of starts to inform us that maybe people with 2 adults and kids are the ones kind of taking the survey at home, which is pretty typical of the Parks and Rec survey. We also kind of ask people to break down their households by age. So you can kind of see where those kind of 2 adults kind of in their mid-years, 1964, and then how the children kind of break down, as well as our senior citizens in respondents. We also wanted to understand how people are finding out about information, just so that it's kind of a helpful tool for the township to understand. The majority of people are getting information from their email or township newsletters, as well as social media, and then that third one is letters from their commissioners, or emails from their commissioners. So kind of again, trying to set a baseline of recreation for the respondents, trying to understand where respondents are visiting. So we kind of divided this into 2 questions, one being which township parks have you visited in the past year, and then the next being what other area parks have you visited in the past year. And we kind of asked people to rate this on occasional or regularly. So if you get a score of 100, that means you're going all the time. 50 is more in the occasional range, and then 0 is that never range. So you can see a lot of people are going to Community Park at Haverford Reserve is kind of the big place people are going, with the Grange and Paddock Park kind of being in the mid. And then you kind of have a lot of just, you know, a good distribution of use throughout your parks. And we ask people to check all that apply with these, so as well. And then kind of comparing that to where people are going outside of the township. Haverford Reserve and Haverford College are kind of those top areas outside of the township are going. So one thing we'll do is kind of look at those areas and see what amenities, especially with some of the more smaller parks, that might be popular. We asked people to rank how their recreational needs were being met on a scale of 1 to 5. So you can see here within the township that was, so you know, we're right at about a 4, which tells us that people feel pretty strongly that their needs are being well met. We also wanted to understand how close respondents live to Brookline Park itself, or the former school site. For the purpose of the surveys, we explained that Brookline School was being referred to as Brookline Park. But you can see, you know, a majority, almost 75%, were within half a mile of the park, so that's a walking distance. Not quite 75%, just under, with, you know, the majority being within a mile of the park itself. So that tells us that, you know, everyone's very interested in what happens here at this park that was kind of taking the survey. We asked people if they had actually visited Brookline Park. So you can see again, 75% have actually been to the park, with some people not having been to the park yet. So then we started to ask people what recreational activities they enjoy the most. So this was a very broad question. It wasn't specifically in regards to the park. So again, you see here, walking and hiking is one of the top responses, and this is common throughout the state. It's actually the top response for the state recreational survey. And then that's closely followed by outdoor family events, which we always find that interesting because some communities that does rank high and others communities it doesn't. And so that kind of tells us that you do have a very community-oriented place. So we want to kind of think about that as we start to plan for facilities. And then playgrounds often rank high as well, closely followed then by nature viewing. You kind of go down that list and you get to those more specific opportunities. They kind of, again, start to wane off and become more generic or more evenly spaced. And then we ask people specifically, and we kind of ask this question 2 different ways. The first time we asked it, and we often do that so that we can kind of compare responses, but the first one was what activities should be accommodated in Brookline Park. So you can see there, sitting and people watching rank kind of the highest with children's play, open play for lawns, safe place for kids to hang out, and walking and jogging, and then you kind of go down the whole list. And one thing we want to keep in mind as we start to look at the survey, again, it's not a vote, it's a way to kind of understand and take a pulse of the community as a whole, so we get a sense of what people would like to see. And then we kind of, in the middle of those 2 questions, we kind of said, what preferred recreational experience would you like to see for Brookline Park? So we gave, 5 options, and we asked people to kind of rank those options, with their top 1 being the priority. So again, you can see the top thing being a place to play or take children to play, and then followed closely by a place to relax or enjoy the outdoors. A place to gather came in right under 3, so this was on a scale of 1 to 5. Trail or walking for jogging and bicycling, and then a place to exercise kind of being the lowest priority. And then again, asking that first question in a slightly different way, what new facilities should be considered for Brookline Park? So we got a little more specific in the type of things, but you can see the things that kind of jump up to the top are kind of basic amenity type offerings. So shade is really important, right? We have a very large open canvas right now, so getting some shade there through trees, benches or places to sit, important, and then looking at landscaping is very important. Walking paths, playgrounds, and then restrooms kind of coming in at that 50%. Followed by picnic pavilions, pathway lighting, and then kind of getting down to those more specific recreational activities, splash pads, basketball courts, play courts, the idea of tables, an event plaza, fitness station, bocce courts, and then ping pong and movable seating kind of following up at the end. So the last 2 questions we asked were open-ended questions. And so what you're seeing here, we call this a word jumble. Some of you might be familiar with it, but it goes through all the responses, and if the word shows up a lot, it becomes bigger. If it's small, it becomes smaller. So this is automatically generated, so I'm not able to filter out words like the or very specific words, but just gives us a quick idea. So the question was, what excites you the most about the future of Brookline Park? So you see green space, neighborhood, community, open space, beautiful, playground, new, kind of all starts to jump forward. And then the partner question is what concerns you most about the development of Brookline? So, and these are things that we, with every master plan, especially in a close-knit residential neighborhood, these are the concerns that we do hear the most. Parking, traffic, the neighborhood, so that might be coming up because people are using that word neighborhood in terms of how things might affect the neighborhood and the response. So we just want to kind of keep these, and what we'll do is, when we print the master plan, the full open-ended responses will be part of the appendix of the report, so people can kind of review those responses and understand what people's concerns and likes were, and all their open-ended responses and some of the more specific questions. So with that, I'm going to pass back over to Pete.
Thanks for going through all that data with us. It's a little dry, but it's important because we want to make sure that you understand we're trying to listen. The most important thing is we need to listen to everyone's opinion. And so some of the elements you can see here that were brought up in the first public meeting, we heard from the focus groups, and there are a lot of different ones. Not everyone will make it to the final plan, but we wanted to show you just some photographic examples of what these things are. Here are some examples of what we would call a town green, and they're all different. They're not exactly the size of your space, but they give you an idea, and there's all kinds of different permutations of a town green. And so that's, again, something in open space. that has shade, lawn areas, plazas for gathering, sitting, etc. So you could find 5,000 more examples, of course. Event space, small focal plaza perhaps, maybe a place for movie nights where you have a blow-up screen, maybe some games. We've been using more and more like outdoor ping pong tables in little plazas where you bring your own paddles, and it's a great game to play outside, and families can play it, and all ages can play it. They even have semi-indestructible foosball tables. A structure, and what should that be? Could it be a little gazebo? Could it be a shade structure? Restrooms came up very strongly. The middle school group, we asked them, should we have restrooms? And they said, well, of course we should have restrooms. And then the restrooms, I have to say, are always the most controversial item in every park for all the reasons we know. And one of the things that also came through quite strongly with our committee is we want to have a restroom, but it has to be maintained, it has to be clean, and it has to be open when people are using the park. So those are very important components if the township decides to include a restroom. And again, because this park is meant to be special, we don't want to go and buy a little restroom structure off a shelf and just stick it in the park. We want this to be a beautiful structure, whatever it is, if it's a gazebo or a restroom or a storage building, whatever it is. We don't want the generic one. A spray pad, if there's a water feature in the park, we understand it has to be very small scale. And because these little spray areas are only used 3 or 4 months a year, mainly what it would be a little plaza. Most of the year, it's just going to be a little plaza where you might have an event. If there are any, you can see on the picture on the left, these jets are hidden in the concrete so that if it's not turned on, you don't even know it's a spray plaza. So that's an option, it's a possibility. There are certainly maintenance things that happen. And then with the court areas, if we have, and again, not all these might make it, but if we have things like Foursquare or a basketball court or hopscotch, there are beautiful ways and artistic ways to interpret those courts. So these are just examples of not your average Joe court, but something that's maybe a little more dynamic, a little more exciting, just using simple colors, which can make it much more interesting. Lighting might be an option for the park. If you go to a town green, often there's some lighting. It could be low-level bollard lighting. It could be hanging lighting. It could be, there's all kinds of different lighting. With LEDs, it's very efficient. So it's something to consider, because if you come home and it's not raining on a night like this, and it's maybe a little warmer, you might want to go out and just walk around the park. The other thing is, one of the things that the middle school group told us is, we really don't need a playground. There's tons of playgrounds in the township. What we need is a place for teenagers to hang out. And if we're, teenagers, our experience as teenagers, we all forget we were once teenagers, because nobody wants teenagers in their neighborhood anymore. And we've heard this in every community we've been in. They're one of the most, along with seniors, they're one of the most underserved groups in all of our communities. So if we're going to have a place where we want teenagers to hang out, it has to be visible, and this park is great because it's small. You can see across the park, and you could create, if you want, a place for not only teenagers but old people like me to hang out, and you can be seen from the street, so you're not doing bad things. And teens are usually okay with that. When I was a teenager, if I wanted to do bad things, I'd go where people can't see me. This is not going to be a place like that. Okay, so it's something to consider as we're going through. The furnishings, there's all types of furnishings, and we just showed a variety here. And I won't describe them. I think the pictures speak for themselves, but there's all kinds of exciting ways to have nice furnishings in a park. One thing we will not recommend in this park is chain link fencing. We do not want to recommend chain link fencing, because chain link fencing says something, and we don't want it to say that. We want a higher quality of a fence. We want a higher design standard here, and that will go also with site furnishing. So those are just a few examples of some of the things we're going to talk about. Now Sarah's going to take you through the 4 concepts, and again, hold your questions. We'll get some clarifying questions, and then we'll break for 10 minutes, and then we'll get back together, and then we'll talk about each of the concepts. We'll go back to all of them, and you can tell us what you like and don't like, and I'll give out some dots, and you can put a dot on the one that you like the best.
Great. So quick, just to orient everybody, we're looking at a base map of the existing condition of the park as it is today. So you see Earlington Ave here on the left, Sagamore to the right, the two adjacent homes to the right of the parcel, and then to the bottom there is Kenmore Road. And we're kind of looking at where the former school and pavement have been. We kind of come over with green here, though we do still have some gravel construction access up in here. We have the former curb cut from Sagamore Road. And then down along Kenmore, you do still have the existing court area. And then we have some more mature trees at each corner along Earlington, and then some mature evergreens back along the residential properties, and a few shade trees kind of around that court area. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a series of 4 concepts, and these explore the same kind of program elements, but start to look at how the relationships between the elements might change and how that affects kind of layout of the parkway. So what we're looking at with concept A here, and one of the things we kind of looked at in each concept was different options for how you might relate to Earlington Road, how we might want to enclose the park or not enclose the park. So in this concept, we kind of came up with the idea that the whole park would have a series of fence with walls that kind of create key entrance points, so that wall could reuse the stone from the school building. So we have kind of fence around the whole park, and then so that controls access just at the pathways that you're seeing in kind of this grayish purple area. So at each intersection, Sagamore Road in Earlington and then Kenmore Road in Earlington, we have a small plaza that allows for kind of movement in and out of the park from the existing sidewalk. And then on each side road, we're looking at the idea of parking. So this parking, we're maintaining the road width as is, but then kind of letting pull-in parking come into the park itself. We're showing 20 spaces on each road, but this is something as you kind of phase the park and design, maybe you determine that you don't need 20 spaces to start with. Maybe you start to look at how parking gets phased in, but we just want to look at the idea of how much parking would be feasible as we start to kind of back into what the need of parking is on the site. So with this, we do have kind of a main plaza coming central off of Arlington Road, so that kind of brings back the memory of the entrance into the school. We're showing kind of a placeholder of a building that could house a single restroom or a small shade pavilion. And then on the opposite side of that, we have kind of the idea of a water feature spray area, and then a playground to either side of that. And then that kind of opens up into this large central eclipse, which has been sized so it accommodates youth soccer and t-ball, kind of pick up t-ball, with kind of a series of little tiny court or plazas that would be at key nodes around that eclipse. And then kind of having more planting area, trees kind of ringing that eclipse, and then stormwater BMPs as you start to get to the eastern side of portion of the site. And then looking at buffer plantings kind of along those neighboring properties here as well. Also in this concept, we kind of looked at the idea of maybe you have more kind of specialized plantings that create a transition from Earlington into kind of the parks proper. So that's what this darker green is kind of showing the idea of more horticultural plantings, so kind of shrubs, perennials and grasses, those types of materials. Looking at concept B, we kind of took the approach here that maybe we kind of start to divide the park into 2. So you kind of have the transition area that gets you from Arlington into the park. So again, using kind of a series of pathways that would bring you in from the corner, again with those little plaza nodes at the main entrances. We have one on centrally located and another one at Kenmore Road with walkways that would bring you in again to kind of a central plaza. And then here we're looking at that idea of a low stone wall that creates that separation between that transition area from Earlington into the central plaza and then into kind of this open quadrant green area. So again, each of these quadrants would kind of accommodate a small soccer game or t-ball game. And then off of that central plaza area, again, we have kind of that placeholder structure and then the idea of 2 fenced-in play areas off of that plaza. With one central plaza at the intersection of our kind of cross pathways through the park. And then again, kind of a more natural pathway along the eastern edge, where again we'd have stormwater BMPs and then buffer plantings before you get to the neighboring residential. So again, on those concepts showing that on-street parking, and I should note in all concepts, looking at improved crosswalks across Earlington Rd at both of those intersections, Kenmore and Sagamore. We also kind of showed the idea that maybe if it was warranted to have kind of that mid-block crosswalk in the neighborhood roads itself, kind of into the park. So concept C, this one was a little unique in that we looked at what would happen if we really start to develop kind of a grove of trees around all the edges of the park. So we kind of worked with that defining idea that we would have a big central green. So it's a little more circular in this concept with, again, kind of plazas at each node. But then supporting that, you would have kind of use areas. So maybe our play court area, basketball court area, playgrounds, but then do a grid of trees kind of filling in all the spaces between the sidewalks and that central green, so that in 10 to 20 years, you would almost have a reforested area. So in the beginning, it might be trees and open lawn. As that evolves, you might come in and do kind of shade appropriate ground covers beneath those trees. But the key is to make sure you kind of keep those sight lines through the park. So we want kind of high branching shade trees. So again, looking at the idea of a half court basketball up in this area, and then kind of more of an open play court. So that would be kind of the idea of maybe gaga ball or Foursquare. I know currently some people do play pickleball, so this would be large enough for pickleball as well if we wanted to see that use continued in the park. So with this concept, it was a little different that we didn't have a central access off of Arlington, and then we are looking at kind of fencing all the way around the park again here. But the access is kind of only off of the corners and brings you into the middle of the site pretty quickly. So then concept D kind of looks at maintaining things a little much in terms of keeping the basketball court down in the same area of the park. But again, looking at how we kind of create a transition between Earlington Rd and the park itself. Here we did something a little different in that we kept the existing sidewalk, but then said, let's get a row of trees along that sidewalk, and then let's set the fence back a little bit, and then kind of have that denser planting behind the fence. So it kind of starts to create your streetscape, and then you're in the park, you're in the park. So to get into the park, it's more you kind of come down the side streets, and then you have a trail that kind of brings you into the park itself. So this concept probably looks the most away from Earlington Rd in terms of how the park relates to Earlington Rd. You really kind of create a separation. We do have a really large green in this area, kind of central to the park. It's probably the largest of the four concepts. On either end of that, we have a small plaza. And then, like I said, we had kind of the basketball court maintained in the existing location. And then from that, kind of like a small pathway through a garden area. So this could be maybe there's small sitting areas along this, but again, kind of more of those low shrub and grass and perennial plantings through this area, and then kind of mirroring that on the other side next to a playground that would be in an enclosed fenced area. But maybe this becomes a pollinator's garden that reflects more of the idea that you have small kids playing up in this area. And then again, showing a structure that would be kind of either a restroom or shade structure. And then the idea of kind of a plaza area that would be kind of an open, could be for open play or yoga or small kind of neighborhood events. You can kind of see how, again, with this one, we probably showed the least amount of parking just because we're maintaining the basketball court. But again, like we said, we didn't anticipate needing all the parking and all these concepts we anticipated being phased in. So with that,
just a couple other comments. One of the things you obviously have noticed is we felt we didn't want to take, we wanted to take as little green space as possible for new parking. And some of the concerns, some of the committee members and some of the members of the public said, gee, we're worried about, our parking being taken away. So on 3 of the 4 concepts, because we're just heading in instead of parallel parking, we'd actually double the amount of parking that's there now, roughly. Okay, we go from 10 spaces to 20 spaces on both sides. And And the committee, I think the committee was pretty, at least their opinion was, yeah, we don't want to have lots of green space taken for parking. Even though we want to encourage people to walk there, a lot of us will drive, you know, depending on all kinds of things. And the other thing was, the planting is very sort of conceptual. This is not a planting plan. And A and B that don't have a lot of trees shown doesn't mean it won't have more trees. It's just we're focusing on the division of spaces. So planting is not really shown, except in C where we said, gee, maybe we replant a lot of it. And the other thing that we haven't gotten into yet is topography, grade changes. You know, we can vary. It doesn't have to be a flat site. We can bring in some fill. We can bring in some soil. We can create. We're not going to create a mountain here, but we can create some general changes in grade that make it interesting. That gives some buffering to streets or separate spaces or things like that. So that's still part of the thought process we haven't gotten to yet, which we'll get to in the next sort of iteration. So before you do your dots, and I should mention too, if you haven't signed in, please sign in on the way out. I want to see if anybody has questions. Go ahead, questions about any of them.
What's the justification for having 40 or 45 parking spots for that amount of space? I don't understand what.
Okay, right now, there are about 20 spots on the street. If you take the two side streets, right? So what we're doing is, there's been concern voiced that, gee, more people will come to the park, we need more parking spaces. So we're showing options how you might create more parking without taking a lot of park space away. Sarah mentioned that you could conceivably build the parking in phases. Maybe you only build parking on one of the streets and see if that's enough. Or maybe we build no more parking and then nobody should complain if they lose their space on a busy weekend if people are there. So that's the reason we're doing it. There are no, in the world of parking, if I'm going to build a shopping center, Township has strict regulations that I have to have 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet of shopping center. There are no such guidelines in park design. It's based upon the designer's experience, and here we're just trying to provide options.
I'm not saying any hours. I'm saying every single one has 40 spots with
a
promise of flexibility or a promise of possibility.
Right.
And I'm only saying one real.
You're absolutely right. And as I mentioned at the beginning, these are not even close to final plans. These are interchangeable parts. So as we go further, we might have a plan working with you and the committee that we have no more spaces than are there now. All we're trying to say is we heard a concern from the community and from our committee that, gee, we need more parking. And if you're saying you don't need any parking, great. We'll figure it out as we get to the final. So nothing you see here, we're not locked into anything yet. These are ideas to explore. Go ahead.
I know in the last meeting that I was in, a couple people suggested having parking come off early.
Correct.
Is there some reason that the concept don't reflect that?
Yes. Earlington, first of all, it's a state road. It's a busy road. And we don't think, I mean, we do a lot of this stuff. We don't think first of all, we don't think it's a good idea to put a parking lot in the park because number one, it takes away green space. You may disagree with this, but I'm just telling you why we got there. It takes away green space. Then when you have parking in a park, you automatically have pedestrian vehicle conflicts because people have to cross parking lots, except stuff like that. Plus, it's a very busy road. We don't think it would be the least safe way to bring parking into the site. So that's the reason behind it. Go ahead. Question.
Hi. I kind of on what Ryan said. I live directly across from the current entrance of the driveway, and yes, Earlington is a busy road, but I had emailed you guys what I saw at Glen Park in Villanova, which is on Conestoga Road, which is equally as busy, and I believe also State Road, and their parking has an entrance on one side of Conestoga and an exit back onto Conestoga, so the flow of traffic is in one direction. I just feel like that would also eliminate the cars that are going into the neighborhood, but maybe also slow down the traffic on
Okay, thanks. We're going to hold opinions. We want questions. If you have a question about something, something to clarify, something you don't understand, let's hold on the opinions, but thank
Well,
you.
the question is then why would you put so many parking spaces in the neighborhood?
I just explained that because some of the people that we've talked to have expressed their concern there won't be enough parking from what's there now. And what I've said is maybe we will not have any additional parking. That's a decision to be made. All we're showing is options at this point. Other questions or things that are not clear.
I have a quick question for you, because I live right across from the park, and 7 of those parking spaces where they're lined up right now are smack in front of the property.
Right.
I already struggle with it, keeping the street with the way it is. I struggle now with cars that are parallel parking, blocking my driveway and not being able to get in.
Right.
So I see people backing into my cars, coming out of your parking spaces.
Okay.
I mean, it's not.
There's a question there somewhere, but we'll come back to it. Who has a question, something they don't understand? Go ahead with the mask on, sir.
Yes, could you clarify what stormwater BMP means?
Yeah, stormwater BMP it refers to a best management practice. And as I mentioned, we have to by law control all the stormwater that flows off the site. It can be no more stormwater flowing off in the built condition there is now, and actually we want to reduce it. Also, the other thing we have to do is, in the last 10 years or so, is water quality standards, that we actually have to filter the water through the existing soil or special soils we bring to the site so that the stormwater is filtered and the water quality is enhanced.
So are you saying that's a ditch or a basin of some sort?
What a stormwater management thing is, it can be underground, it can be above ground, a slight depression. And you had a question, is it a ditch? No, it's not a ditch. It's a rain garden or a stormwater management basin, but it's not a ditch. Okay, and we can show you examples as we go through the process.
I would love that.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering why during the presentation that there hasn't been a lot of mention of words, elderly, senior citizen, older adults, because there are so many different, pieces of playground equipment for older adults to socialize with, for well-being, for fitness, and so I'm just wondering, talking about kids is in big letters, soccer, all of this. I remember once pickleball, that's all I do right
The
now.
reason the kids are in big letters is that was made from the survey.
Correct.
I mentioned to you, we're meeting with a senior group next week. And the other part of it, one of the things that's great about this park is it's going to be very easy to make everything accessible. So, and one of the goals, if you remember at the beginning, was all ages. We want this to be accessible for all ages. Go ahead.
No, I didn't hear all ages mentioned. And also too, like we were talking about films and bumps and everything, that's not all ages. When I looked at the pictures of the different equipment, which you did say could be changeable, there's no like bars or flat and modern benches. But I'm just wondering. And then also too, I am so sad that the average age of persons living in Haverford was 49 that answered the survey, and not older adults, and that's just sad. So just one more quick comment. I'm wondering if there's any way that, have Parks and Recreation and put out an article on the importance of playgrounds where it comes to fitness, socialization, longevity, yada, yada, for older adults.
Sure. Great suggestion. Who has another question?
Thank you. I really like the different concepts that were presented. My question is, and based on how I'm going to vote tonight, I'm having trouble conceptualizing like the amount of space in a circle versus like A and C versus D. And if a concept D would pose something like another field where we have all over Havertown that would like be used for like soccer games, or like are all 4 of these concepts open to like then renting out the green space for organized sports, or is this like purely all 4 of these looking to be just like green space, or is one more leaning towards organized sports versus the other?
Okay, good question.
Dedicated?
Good question. Brian and Eileen have assured us, and that their direction has been, they're not going to be organized sports here. It's not going to be the boys' 13-year-old soccer league or whatever. These are going to be, maybe there'll be some pickup t-ball, or maybe a soccer practice, not on a full-size field. So the intent here is passive recreation. It's not organized sports. It might be a great place to go out with your son and your grandson and throw a frisbee around, or a football or something like that. So the intent is no organized.
I just want to clarify that. So the existing practices and games that take place there currently, the intent is to maintain that level of use. So that was one of the program items that was given to us.
And that's subject to change from the park and rec department. Go ahead, another question.
Yeah, so you said earlier that there are different amenities, they're interchangeable. You can have some things from one concept to another concept.
Sure.
So is it fair to say that a lot of the concepts on the list, like spaces for teenagers, spaces for elderly, could be incorporated and you can find
Absolutely.
Okay, so then the next question is, what are you asking us to vote?
We're asking you to vote on, just looking at this, what's your favorite layout? It's really a layout question. Do you prefer, can you imagine C, where you have lots of trees and you look under trees in 20 years? Would you like to have this more formal ellipse in A? It's really a layout. What we're trying to do with these plans is just do a basic spatial organization. How the spaces break down. So yeah, go ahead. ma'am.
In concept A, you refer to it as concept D, the section that is parallel to Earlington. Call it something, not a buffer, but
Transition maybe?
yes.
Right.
Why do we actually need that? It's not actually going to be usable, that we can't use for the parking.
Yeah.
Because this is, my question to you is, who's looking at the traffic?
It's a
Because the
good,
people that live not just around that park,
Right.
but on the next block, where because of Earlington and the lights, they're flying through anyway. So I'm just curious, who do we go to? We like this, but we have an additional issue.
well, the reason, first of all, the reasoning behind it is usually heavy traffic is a negative connotation for most people. And so let me finish my answer. Let me finish what I'm trying to tell you. So the transition is meant to buffer the heavy traffic so that maybe you're in the park, you're not distracted by all these cars going by, both the noise and the commotion of traffic. You may not like that idea, we're just presenting it as an option. If there are plans here that don't really have a transition, and so if you don't like the transition, maybe you vote for a plan that doesn't have it. It's an option.
Well,
And
I guess my question is, why is there not an option without parking on our residential?
because again, I've said it 3 times. When we met with the community the first time and with our committee, people said, oh my God, there are going to be more people coming here. We need more parking. And if we provide parking, how do we do it? We've tried to do it in the most green way possible, meaning taking as little of the park space. We might get to a point with a community and a committee where we say, okay, we're not going to put any more parking than is there now, and we're good with that. So even though you don't see it on a plan, it is an option, okay? Because it doesn't change too much. You get another 20 feet of park space on either side, or 15 feet, whatever it is. So that's why we haven't drawn everything. I'm going to take 2 more questions, and then we're going to vote, and then we're going to talk a lot more. Go ahead.
Hey, yeah, thanks. Thanks for pulling this all together. It's great. Safe to say, maybe I'm beating a little dead horse here, but like the sizes of things have changed. So like concept is big, but although maybe not quite so big, right? It was shrink a little to allow certain city areas, and then also safe to say, like when you're talking about parking, you were building in like maybe a layer of conservatism. Like we've heard parking is an issue, so we're going to show everything we can do. If we put all the parking that we could possibly put on these areas, knowing it's not necessarily what's going to be needed or happen, but conservatively speaking, we'll cut into the park and show you what we can do with that space, and then we can grow it from there. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I don't know if we'd grow it. I don't think we'd recommend any more parking than we show
No,
on
I
these
mean
plans.
grow the green space out into it.
Sure, yes, absolutely. Then again, as I said, we don't have to provide any more parking.
Right.
We can keep the parking on the street and that's it. We're gonna do one more. Go ahead in the back. Yes, you.
So I noticed on all of them, the BNP or the water,
Yes.
water area is all on that one side.
Yes.
Does that have to be that way because of the elevation change, or is that?
Basically, I mean, it's again a concept. There's about an 8-foot change in grade from the northwest corner down to that area where the fence is. So the water's going that way. We could, though, I mean, all the stormwater BMPs where the water gets absorbed, it all doesn't have to happen here. We can have, on any of these concepts, we can have BMPs that are at intermediate points of the site where water gets absorbed in different places, etc. Part of that involves, when we go to design engineering, we have to do percolation tests to see how the water infiltrates into the soil. And the exact final stormwater design is based on those percolation tests. So just as a general concept, we know we have to pick up water here, make sure it doesn't go into these neighboring properties ever. But we can do it other places too. Okay, so now what we'd like to do is we're going to break for like 7 minutes. I think, did we put the dots out there?
Everyone was good with that.
Okay, so you all have dots. Take a look at the plans, and then we'll get everybody back together, and then we'll tear into, I like this, I hate this, don't do this, please do that, and we'll go from there, okay? So we'll get back in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
I was just
Concept A, I think, has 14 or 15 dots. Concept C, I think, has 13. So that's pretty close. B is the big loser of the night, and D is third. So it looks like people preferred like either that layout or lots of trees, and maybe a little of both. So, okay, that's great. That helps us. Let's start by what things are not in any of these plans that somebody thinks we need to include. Are there some features or an element that's not anywhere on these plans? Go ahead.
On A, there doesn't seem to be a passport or anything like there are on the other two.
Okay, but I guess what I'm saying is not on those particular plans, but on generally on the plans, we have a half court. Are there elements that are missing that we haven't included? Let's start with that.
A dog run. I know it's too small of an area for a dog park, but even just like a little sectioned out area, like our kids are on the playground, the dog can run up and down.
Okay, a dog run. We're taking notes tonight too, so dog run. Okay. Anything? Go ahead.
I'm a little concerned about like the streetscape of Earlington and it being too flat. And I was curious about this wall fence thing, and like it should be integrated into the, when you're driving by, you shouldn't see like nothing or,
Yeah, and
without that beautiful building that we lost.
yes, and concept D, and again, this is interchangeable. We show the sidewalk and then a sort of a green swath here with tree setback. So there are options where we create more of a streetscape on Earlington, and then some of the other options.
But is the wall like a wall, or is it just?
Well,
Sorry, a low wall.
We probably don't have enough stone for a big wall. We don't want to block visibility.
No.
So we're talking something that might be 3 feet, 3.5 feet, maybe in combination with nice, again, we're seeing in our minds metal, iron fencing, not chain link fencing, something very elegant looking. But just, and the other thing I'll mention about fencing is, and again, we have all different settings for fencing. Sometimes when you have fencing on some of these, it really helps you control where access is so that you don't get paths worn through lawns or something, and you can create spaces so that if there's a fence along this edge, then maybe you can create a space here that you feel a little more protected in, that you can have your back to the street, and somebody's not going to run in that way or something. So again, it can help sometimes depending on what the layout is. Okay, so let's just open up to anything. What opinions? Huh?
Start with what you like. So you want to go with the top concepts and kind of maybe why someone picked that, why they liked it.
Okay, so the top concept, we're going to say C, B and C were tied for, because I can't count too well, or A and C, excuse me. So why don't you tell us what you liked about A? Go ahead.
In both of them, I like that there's like almost this infinity walk, like you could walk there for a long time.
Okay, other things people liked about A if you voted for A? Go ahead.
Someone else mentioned it, but I do like on A, the sort of entrance that mirrors the old school concept there.
Part of the site history.
I don't like it.
Let's just stay with lights. What do you like about A?
There's different zones with potentially different activities. I think we just have a lot of lawn, and maybe some activities, just makes it so much more common to get the and they just allows for more development in different zones, with different kinds of activities, different kinds of planting, different densities.
Great, okay. What else? Other things that somebody likes about A? Okay, what about C? Who voted for C, and what did you like about C? The one with lots of trees. I assume you like the trees, but other things. Anything? Is that the main thing you like if you voted for C? Lots of trees? Go ahead.
I voted for the trees for sure, but also there is the aspect of the court that, on the upper corner, and there are definitely different zones that you can work with around this central green space.
Is
like an allocated project.
Okay, is that a recurring theme with A and C, that it's broken up into different zones, which is good rather than having one big space to have a bunch of smaller spaces? Okay, I'm seeing nodding heads. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I like the zones too, and I like seeing, I think a little more than A, not because of the trees, but because of A, when you, like, there's that extra path, like, straight through, like, the middle of it, it's broken up in the oval, but like, then you have, like, these really teeny tiny zones, right? Just to the left of the, like, water garden place. So, like,
Right.
I just feel like there's a couple of pockets in there where it's almost like, what would you be able to purpose that space for? I mean, maybe just a bench or whatever, but I feel like you would have a lot more options to create, like, these certain spaces that have, like, a kind of a use with concept C, where it's compartmentalized, but much bigger footprint.
Okay. Any other things about A or C that you like? Go ahead.
We also have that open area where moms are sitting and watching. It's here. You can see it all. So you've got like a 365 of what's happening.
Okay. All right, why don't we know a lot of you don't like more parking. We heard that loud and clear. It's going to be in our notes. What other things might you not like about either A or C, things that you see there? Go ahead.
In C, in concept C, there are so many trees that I would feel that once those trees mature, it will cut down on visibility. You wouldn't be able to see.
Because of the trunks or because of branches?
Possibly because of those.
Okay, because I mean, it's a fair comment. Our goal would be for whatever trees you plant, that they're high branched, so that we maintain, you know, the 4.5 to 6 foot eye level clear through the park. But it's a good concern to have. Go ahead.
I have a question. On concept A, the playground equipment area, is that fenced in, or is it just the perimeter of the park? And is it a true fence?
Yeah, on the way this is shown, concept A has a fence around the perimeter of the park. And that's always a question for play areas. Do we fence the play area? Do we fence the park? I think either is a valid concern.
I'm just thinking with how busy Earlington is, and I'm thinking of my late 70s mother-in-law that watches my toddler, not her, you know, being able to keep up with her running.
Okay.
Concerning if it is an open, like, stone wall, kind of visually appealing fence, as opposed to something that really.
So something like concept,
Safety measure on such a mini.
so like concept B or D, where we're showing that play area specifically fenced in, is more appealing?
Yeah, I voted for A, if that had a fence around the play area for safety concerns, the closeness to Earlington, I would feel a lot better about it.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
So I voted for A, but I would say, similarly to that, there's too much, concentrating a lot of stuff around that building, and then to spread out some of the different amenities that you can do with some, so it's not like one play area, it's right there, the building, whatever, and then in the back, that's where that's big. I think there's opportunities to spread some of these things out.
Okay, so the comment was maybe spread out stuff throughout the park. One of the things we talked about in the committee was not even having a play area, but having play elements throughout the park, where we could have a play structure with some safety surfacing here, and then something over there, or, you know, so that could be a possibility too. Go ahead, sir.
The building, should be along the river, not in the middle of the ground.
Okay, and why? Okay, do you have a suggested perimeter? Do you want to put it here, 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 here? I know, but which, do you have a preference? Which one?
I would
You
assume
don't,
early.
okay.
In the center of the ground.
Okay, just not in the center. Okay, go ahead, sir.
C, and
As someone who lives adjacent to the park, I don't want that building near, like, I'm not in favor of Brookline at all, but it's going to be there. I don't want it to be in front of my house, and I'm sympathetic to everybody else too. I think it should be in the center. And the same thing with the basketball court, if that's going to make it, it should be in the center, because that's probably gonna cause more noise than other things, and it's gonna be adjacent to the edge where
Okay.
it's disruptive.
Okay, is there anybody who lives down near the existing court now? Is, in your opinion, is it a problem right now, or is it okay? or-
People can use very slightly now, and I have no problem with them. And I just think if it's more towards the center, the noise is less.
Sure. What about somebody who lives right there? You raised your hand.
I live right there. Gentleman in the back.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So, it's, the court area there is fine. My only concern would be that it's a full-size basketball court, but could it be a court, a half court, and also a surface, hard surface for something else?
Sure.
Because in all actuality, just think of, if I were to sit back here with a basketball, and every once in a while just go boom, boom, it gets a little annoying.
Yep.
So that actually, the sound of the basketball, I love watching the kids play, that's a terrific thing. But there's always a time and a place, and when it gets late in the evening, the answer is, oh, just call the police, they'll have them, chase them away or something. So you want a place, for teenagers to go. But the thing is, bouncing that ball goes through the house. You can hear it through the house. Not that I don't like it, it's just that after a certain time, it doesn't.
Sure, absolutely. And, maybe there should be a basketball court here. Again, we're talking about options. Maybe it would be better. There are lots of basketball courts in other parts of the township. Maybe there shouldn't be one here. So that's certainly open for discussion. Go ahead.
I think I like the idea of a half court and let it have something else, because then it's not a full game with great form. The other concern that we do notice with basketball, it does go over the basketball goes over the fence in the street, which is fine, right? Depending upon the fence, they can start jumping the fence to get the wall.
Okay. Okay. Who else? Who else has a comment? Go ahead in the back, ma'am.
I want to get back to the restrooms and saying that I don't think the restrooms should be there. The township has a hard time. They try their best, and I know that they don't have big standing issues like everybody else did. They couldn't even have the grass there next year. We had all our neighbors out there cutting the grass because the grass was maintained. So I really feel like the restroom will not be maintained.
Okay, yeah, if you remember the survey, 50% of the people said a bathroom is desired. So definitely, I think we have opinions on both sides. I'm sorry?
So 50% said no.
Correct, 50% said no, 50% said yes. And as I mentioned, it's always a item of discussion every part we do.
I feel like that you all have been very pro restrooms.
Well, personally I am, because when I go to a park, I don't want to have to go behind a bush, or if my wife comes with me, I don't want to have her go behind a bush. I personally think that when I grew up, restrooms were in all parks, okay? I think let me tell you, I've done parks where we've had teenagers hanging out on benches. And so the agency said, let's pull out the benches. So we have no benches in the park, so mothers go to the park with their young children, they have nowhere to sit. So I gave you my personal opinion, but this is not about my personal opinion. We're trying to get a pulse of everybody. We're going to talk to the township. I'm sure the commissioners are going to weigh in on that. And so we're trying to understand, and I think we do, all the pluses and minuses, and there are definitely pluses and there are definitely minuses. And I think I mentioned early on that the committee is very strong in saying we only want to have bathrooms if the township commits to maintaining them, they're clean. One of the things the township's exploring now are automatic locking systems, which is a new thing with bathrooms. So we're just exploring it, and if we don't talk about it, we won't explore it. So that's really what we're trying to do. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It is hard just when you have like smaller kids and you're at a park, if there's when there's no restroom and one person has to go, you now have to pack up your entire family, leave the car. It really does bust up your day a little bit for people with
I have small kids too, and I appreciate that, but also like your wife on behind the bush, and two little girls that they have, but I mean, I feel like where we're at in our neighborhood too, that there's, while it's so close, there's restaurants at the end of the street, another block over, where there's a coffee shop at the and there's a lot of closed bathrooms too, and I love living there, because I wish it was good, we could keep bathrooms, or I know it's hard to staff it.
Sure. No. Go ahead, ma'am.
Quick question for you, the 50% or you have those stats still? I'm curious, did everybody give their addresses? Because I would love to know the percentage of the residents that are actually around the park.
Yeah, if you took
What
this,
that percentage would be
Yeah.
for bathrooms.
yeah, we did ask, and we could run that number. We could run the distance people live from the park and whether or not they favored or didn't favor a bathroom. We don't have names and addresses because it's anonymous, but we can run that. We'll run that and have that at the next meeting.
Most of us are less than that age.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting question, and we can pull that information. Go ahead,
Along
sir.
those lines, I'd like to see, like, the neighbors, what percentage didn't want the bed, as opposed to the middle school, because of course the kids are going to tell you they want a bed. So is that giving you the 50-50 because the kids are up here and the people around there are saying no?
I'm sorry. I think I just said we can run it for, we have people who live an eighth of a mile or a half of a mile. We can determine who favored a bathroom based upon how far away
So
they live.
the focus group that we held with the middle school students, that has nothing to do with the survey results. Those were two different ways that we gathered information. So the middle school students they showed us models with a bathroom in the park. They showed us, like they said, they felt like bathrooms were important because if you're hanging out in the park and you suddenly have to figure out how to get home, because you might not be closer to home as a teenager, you might be walking a half a mile.
That's a vote that they have compared to the people who live around there who have to live with it.
Yeah.
Understood.
And again,
You're going to say no, so you've got a yes here that's counteracting the no for the people who have to live there.
right, we hear everybody loud and clear. Some people like bathrooms, some do not. We understand that, and it's going to be a big item for discussion for the committee and for the township. Go ahead, ma'am.
If the bathroom goes in, what I don't like is, I don't like having the bathroom right at the entrance to the park.
Right.
Because on Earlington, if you're going, walking by there, you see the bikes parked at the entrance and people using the bathrooms just go and then leave. So,
Yeah.
I like that.
But just going back to your early comment, bathrooms are good for old guys like me, so we are trying to provide for old people.
We've had a hand up in the very back for a while.
Go ahead. Just spoken before.
Mr. Barrett, question, because he's mentioned many times events and putting 40 parking spots there. Is this going to be?
20. There are 20 there on the street now. We're adding 20.
The charts are showing about 40 parking
No.
spots.
I know, but I just want to make sure I'm being clear.
Yeah.
There are about 20 now on the street at those streets.
Correct.
We're adding 20 with these plans, or we add none. We said we don't have to add any.
Okay. Right. Is this going to be designed to be a destination to bring people?
No, we wouldn't expect to do a whole lot of programming there. The programming that might happen there might be through your local civic association. They want to do a movie night, they want to do a neighborhood flea market, they want to do something like that. We don't expect to put youth sports there, we don't expect to permanent too much. So, but the other thing is, if we put no parking there, my feeling is that the neighbors are the ones that are going to lose the parking spots they currently use on the street. So if we put no parking there, you might come home with 5 spots, and there's people using the park, and all the parking spots along either side as it's currently comprised. So the conversation in the committee was that the parking was really to protect the neighbors, so that the neighbors would have a place to park.
You're not going to protect the neighbors and churches when you use the park.
But I noticed that all these things, there was no concept of the Earlington Road. I know Earlington Road was touched, there's 2 acres that were used as driveways and things.
Right.
I'm sure you observed. I don't know why there's no concept with parking and making traffic.
Well-
Be on Arlington Road. Because you're talking 40 cars coming through our neighborhood at any given time, right?
Backing out.
The reason we don't show parking on Earlington is because parking is not allowed on Earlington presently, parallel parking.
Access.
The second reason is we have to go to PennDOT and get what's called an HOP or a highway occupancy permit. My guess is, and we haven't approached PennDOT, if we go to PennDOT and say, we would like to have a driveway here and have a parking lot with 20 spaces or 10 spaces, they're going to say, this is a busy road. We'd prefer you come in off of Sagamore with a driveway right here and come into a parking lot there, because that's a much safer street to access parking from. So
There's already 2 driveway aprons at the front of the
this?
Yes.
We still need an HOP because the use has changed. It's gone from a school to a park. And, you know, and PennDOT, you know, everybody gives PennDOT a hard time, but they're really concerned with safety. That's their #1 mission, is safety. And if I'm a PennDOT reviewer, and again, we can go to PennDOT, we can have the conversation, but my guess is they're going to say, come off of Sagamore with a lot if you, rather than come off of Earlington, because it's a safer situation. So their comment's going to be based on safety. They don't care. We could put 50 parking spaces in the park.
People back out of the houses off the road, you know,
I understand, but PennDOT can't do anything about that.
Right.
So, go ahead.
Go back to the bathrooms, I just want to, I was willing to consider if you put bathrooms in there. Ask the high school how good their bathrooms. The high school usage of the bathrooms for the students is not good.
Okay.
So definitely consider if you're gonna have high school and middle school students using the restroom there. If there are some concerns there, I would suggest you talk to them. And then the other thing is, if there is parking, it looks like on the one thing it cuts into the park a little bit. Is that correct? On the D, there's angled spots go into green space.
Yeah, all the concepts that show parking, we're showing it angled here because this is one way, obviously, Kenmore. But they cut in, you know, about 20 feet into the park on both sides, roughly. Yes. Okay, what else? Go ahead.
Again, on the Earlington parking, I mean, I understand what you're saying, what PennDOT's feedback might be, but I would love for that to be run out, because living in the house that I've lived in, which is the third one in from Earlington for the last 10 years, and Kenmore being one way, the speed that cars reach coming up Earlington, flying down Sagamore when they used to go in the entrance of the parking space that's currently there, I've seen so many kids almost get hit by cars. And it's because of them wanting to either fly around to the parking space on Sagamore that was there before, or running down to get to the other side where Kenmore was a one-way. It's dangerous. And to have 20+ parking spaces backing up into the neighborhood street, that's the only space that those kids in those neighborhoods have to ride their bike, have to be playing, you know, basketball, basketball net in front of their house, like, it's
Okay, I mean, just to follow up on that comment, for those of you who expressed not liking the head-in parking, just generally, would you rather have no additional parking? Would that be, do you think, better? Okay, I mean, again, that's why we're here, to try to get those opinions. That's great, thank you.
Question on your upgrades to the Earlington area, are you just putting in crosswalks? There's no speed restrictions going in or anything like that? They're just painted across the road, right?
Again, on a PennDOT road, it's extremely difficult to change speeds on a PennDOT road. I think this is signed for what? 25. So they're, first of all, they're not going to go any lower than 25, even though people go faster than that. One of the things we could explore with PennDOT, and I'm not sure they'll do it, but we actually will explore with PennDOT, is a speed table there, where the intersection, it's not a speed bump, but that crosswalk actually comes up to the level of the sidewalk. So it's designed that you can drive over that at 25 miles an hour. So people, all of us who drive there, we probably all speed, go actually 25 miles an hour across here. So we could explore that with PennDOT, and that's a normal traffic calming device that they use. They may be open to that. We would recommend that. It's not a bump it's like that bump, it just comes up, so that also for handicap access, you come off the sidewalk at the same level and go across. And it gives the pedestrian a little more height. It can be seen better by drivers.
So I live the next block up, I can't tell you how many accidents I've gone out to help the people at that intersection.
I'm sure. I'm sure. I mean, there was just an article in the New York Times last week that the United States is the only Western country where parking fatalities have gone up in the last 5 years. The only country in the Western world.
Vehicular.
So.
You said parking, so vehicular, just to clarify.
Just fatalities. It's the only place it's gone up. So as a country, we drive very badly, and design can help us drive better, those types of devices. Go ahead, ma'am.
So I know throughout all this, we've talked about, you know, we can do this concept, this concept. When will we get an opportunity? I know you're saying, well, what don't you like, what do you like?
Yep.
When we get an opportunity to meet and mesh this together.
Perfect segue. March 29th. We're going to come back. What we're going to be doing in the next couple months is meeting with the committee, massaging. My guess is we're going to focus on A and C and maybe meld those together. We're going to focus on a lot of things we heard tonight and come back with a draft plan that incorporates a lot of the suggestions we heard tonight. So that's the next opportunity that you'll get. But the other thing you can do is you can take the survey if you haven't. I don't know if, has everyone taken the survey? Okay. And let me see. Also contact us. I think on the handout, our contact information is there. Please, this young woman sent us an email some weeks ago. Please send us an email. It will go into the public record. That's always good. Call us. If you want to talk to us, we'll talk to you. We will call you back. So over the next several months, you have opportunities to reach out. If you email us, try to email all of us if you can, in case one of us is out of the office for a couple of days. So there's a lot more opportunities for interaction, and this plan is going to stay fluid, you know, right up to the end of June when we show up at public meeting number 4 with the final plan. So got months ahead. Go ahead, you have a follow-up.
Yeah, just a quick question. The senior focus group is next week. I mean, none of the seniors in our neighborhood received word.
Yeah, I think we went through.
We went through the senior advisory board because they had done a recent survey, and they are a senior group that we can identify. We don't know who lives in every house. So, but if you want to be in that group, you can send me an email at the Township, and that group, I think we're trying to schedule for next Monday, I believe.
It's either going to be Monday or Tuesday. I forget which day works better.
Next week is going to be virtual, so you can do it from your home. And you can definitely provide your input. If you're interested, you can send me an email. We'll make sure that they get it. They can share the link to the virtual meeting with you.
I think it's in the newsletter that came out today. The link or anything in the newsletter that came out from at least.
There was a constant contact. Is that what you're talking about?
No, it was like a, is it new? Like
Oh, I
okay, great.
Good chance. My email's on the website. You go to the Township website, you can get my email, and obviously you can send it directly
you can
to
email us directly.
Sarah or Peter, and they'll put you on that list. If you're interested in giving your input and hearing what other seniors have to say. We actually waited on the senior focus group because they had done a recent survey, and they wanted to collect that result so they could share them with the plan, which is why that focus group hasn't happened.
Is there anything we haven't touched on? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, good question. What's going to be in the playground? We don't know yet. I mean, to be honest with you, we're just. I mean, we could scale off those areas. I mean, those areas are probably 20 by 35 or 20 by 40, if that helps. But we're going to be working on that in the next few weeks and getting more definition there. If that answers your question. I mean, it's not going to be. I mean, we don't look at this as a major. Huge playground in the township. It's going to be smaller scale, right? For not a huge number of kids, but so that's the best I can do at this point. And we'll come in with recommendations for equipment. Go ahead, sir.
My question is probably more for the township, Brian and Karen, maybe. You said in the beginning of your talk 2 years before anybody comes up here. And I know it was brought up before. Are there any plans to address this up now? Because that fence is atrocious, stones all over. Is there any plans to take care of it now?
There has been some talk with the manager about the sidewalks. Challenge would be, we don't want to spend a lot of money and then take down what we did. You know what I mean? So if we try to do fencing now, that's not where we may ultimately go, are we going to have to then take it down? I do understand your concerns, and that's definitely been a conversation between the manager and myself and the commissioner about what do we do in here? And we do think that it needs to
2
be
years
more
is a
safe.
long time. Right now, it looks like an island, right in front of the town.
And really, it's been an eyesore now for 45 years. You know, it's an aging building that is not used much. Having said that, I
Wasn't
understand.
maintained,
Yes, I know, and we understand, and this is why we're hoping to do something for this neighborhood that hasn't been there, hasn't been a usable spot for a long time, which is why we're trying to get it. But you're right, that we would hate to see that for 2 years, it looks like it does. So we will put thought in doing that in a cost-effective way. What we don't want to do is say, put up a fence and think, this isn't ultimately what we're trying to do. And we do understand, and as Peter said, the chain link is ugly and it's unsightly, but trying to figure out where we go from here to actually having a concept that we can actually implement, might take some time. We're afraid of, as we talk about the dangerous of Earlington, that's why we left the fence up our house. People are using it to walk their dogs and not always on a leash, and kids are using it. We're afraid that it's your neighborhood kids. Are you concerned that if there's no fence on Earlington, that it would be safe? That was really our main concern by leaving the fence on Earlington.
Can we get dog bags there?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yeah, yes, we can. And you're hoping that people who walk their dogs are actually bringing bags with them, but yes, we have other parks, and I know they're not, We can put some of those dog bags in, for, in the spring, put some dog bag containers in there, and more trash cans to make sure they.
The buffer that's around the property, still inside of it, around the perimeter.
Next to the road, they can't get rid of that.
Yeah, until the sediments, And soon it should go out, though. I think later this year with the stabilization of the soil, so that you don't have mud running on your sidewalks.
And Brian, maybe in the spring you could do a top dressing and some seating to get a little better and smooth out the rough spots.
Maybe we can have a conversation with the neighbors about maybe that front fence shouldn't be there. That's a conversation we can have.
So,
For safety, is the main issue.
so thank you for coming. Continue to come to these meetings, ask your friends, continue to ask us hard questions and hold our feet to the fire. And I can see you're not afraid to disagree with each other and us. That's good, because we want to come up with the best plan. So thank you. Have a great holiday. We hope to see you in March.
I saw you on, did you see me on Instagram? You were on there.